All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors for Joshua Basin Water District for Wednesday, June 21st, 2017 at 6:30. Karen, would you lead us in the pledge?
Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Determination of a quorum.
Director Unger,
Here.
Director Flown,
Here.
Director Hund,
Here.
Director Luckman,
Here.
and Director Johnson has an excused absence for tonight. You have 4 of the 5, and you have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 4 is the approval of the agenda. I'd like to make one change in the agenda, moving item number 8 with Mr. O'Leary up to in front of item number 7, since he has to get back to where he lives. And with that change, do I have a motion?
Sounds good. I move that we approve the change to the agenda of moving item 8 into the place of item 7.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Since there's no opposition, it stands approved. Public comment, item number 5. Members of the public may address the board at this time with regard to matters within the board's jurisdiction that are not listed on the agenda. State law prohibits the board of directors from discussing or taking action on items not included on the agenda. Members of the public will have the opportunity for public comment on any item listed on the agenda when it is addressed on the agenda. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. Mr. Marquez.
Al Marquez, Sunfair Community. I noticed in the past, the Board of Directors meetings, there was 2 comment periods, one at the beginning of the meeting, one at the end of the meeting. As it stands right now, it's at the beginning of the meeting, and I'd like to request the board, if they're only going to have 1 comment period, it should be at the end of the meeting, so that the people that do attend the meeting, and if they understand or don't understand what's going on with the meeting, and if they have a question after all the discussion, Board of Directors comments and stuff, they should be able to have a public comment on that. So in essence, I'd like to request that the Board of Directors change their plans or modem operation to have a public comment at the end of the meeting instead of at the beginning of the meeting. And the other thing that I would like to say that well 14 been offline for more than a year and a half, and as I understand it, it's still offline. And everybody was saying that you got to get that well 14 online because that's the well that pumps most of the water for the district. There's millions of gallons of water that's been pumped out of that thing, and you have a problem with the water quality of that well because it can't come online. And I remember back in when well 17 was put in line, they had the same problem of water quality. And why they can't get that well 14 back online is beyond me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez. I believe that the general manager will address your concern today. Okay. Consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be adopted in total by 1 action of the Board of Directors unless any board member or any individual or organization interested in 1 or more consent calendar items wishes to be heard. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It is approved. Okay, we're going to move on to the U.S. Geological Service survey study continuation at a cost of $109,100, and turn it over to Mr. O'Leary.
Wait. I must intervene. Madam President and Board of Directors, back by popular demand, is David O'Leary from the United States Geological Survey. We've been working with them since 2002, and we have a staff report, which David's going to go over in more detail in his program, and with great delight and interest, because I find this stuff so intriguing, and Mr. O'Leary's presentation so intriguing. David O'Leary.
Thank you, that was much nicer than I did. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Kurt.
We're going to move, right?
Kurt, I'd say just, if you want to jump in and point to pages in the report or anything as this goes through, and of course, feel free to ask questions at any time. I'd like to thank Kurt for inviting me up. Annual trip up here to talk about what we're doing and what we plan, or what we're planning on doing. I do have some stuff, some repeats from last year for new board members and those just kind of discussing hydrology in general in the Joshua Basin, so I don't mean to be patronizing, but yeah, I wanted to do some review of this stuff. I'm sure everyone memorized from a year ago. So we'll talk about the U.S. Geological Survey and Joshua Basin Monitoring Program. We entered into a cooperative study, we, the USGS, with Joshua Basin Water District in 2000 or 2002, depending on who you ask. The primary goals of that were to develop a geohydrologic framework of the basin, to develop a groundwater flow model of the basin, and then to implement a regional monitoring program, which includes sampling and installation of monitoring sites. And then, as part of this, we're looking at nitrate with septage concerns, trying to, obviously avoid some of the issues that some other communities in the desert have experienced. And then, since the recharge facility came online to monitor the quantity and quality of the recharge water and the recharge facility. So just to summarize previous work we've done, the major points. In 2004, we published what's called the Geohydrologic Framework and Groundwater Flow Model, and that's listed there under published reports, the first one there. In 2007, we installed our first 2 dedicated monitoring sites, what we call JTUZ-1 for Joshua Tree Unsaturated Zone 1 and -2. Those are up on Desert Air Road. JTUZ-3 at the recharge facility was installed 2010, JTUZ-4 in 2012, and then, as you all probably know, in 2014, water was first applied to the recharge facility, and that's ongoing. So here's a list of the published reports as they relate to Joshua Basin directly, especially in terms of water resources. Here's a snapshot. This is looking down. North, of course, is up, looking at both the production wells and then the monitoring sites that are installed. So the blue dots are the Joshua Basin production wells that are active, 10, 14, 15, 17, 16, in no particular order. And then the green sites are the unsaturated zone monitoring sites installed by USGS in cooperation with Joshua Basin Water District. These are JTUZ 1 through 4. 1 and 2 are up on Desert Air Road, just what is, I guess, that southwest of here, and then 3 and 4 are out at the recharge facility. And I'll talk about those in some more detail. Taking a step back, this is just the next slide is a little review of the region's hydrology, and I'm going to show a cross-section that's roughly projected from this line. So we're going to look at a slice through the earth of the basin. And this is from the 2004, this is a figure from the 2004 Groundwater Flow Model report. And so this is moving from up by La Contenta Road, coming down left to right, Highway 62, and then off towards 29 Palms. You can see in this, at least the aquifer was divided into upper and middle and lower aquifers in the groundwater flow model. That darker orange color on the bottom are the basement rocks, what we would call the basement rocks, so the surrounding granitic, granodiorite rocks that you see at land surface around in the mountains. So we're in a big sandbox, and you can see in spots it's up to several thousand feet down to the bedrock. So this is call it sandbox hydrology, where we're dealing with the water in the pore spaces between the sand grains, the silt grains there. And you can see the water table there, the dashed blue line at the top. I'll talk a little bit more detail. You can see the red vertical lines are the faults within the basin. The Pinto Mountain Fault, which is kind of the major fault through this area, is not projected on here because this cross-section is running parallel to the Pinto Mountain Fault. But to the left there, those series of faults are what are known as the Yucca Barrier. Faults in these type of basins tend to act as barriers to groundwater flow, so they're an impediment to groundwater flow. And a lot of times you'll find them based on differences in water levels. So there in the Yucca Barrier, you can see from the Yucca Valley, Warren Basin side,
as you step from left to right or from west to east across the fault, you can see the water level steps down several hundred feet. The exact location of those faults, so they're drawn as solid lines on here, but it's kind of unknown. It's somewhere between the cemetery, and then as you move over from the cemetery to the west towards mental physics, that's kind of blur your eyes and say, okay, there's the Yucca barrier stepping across. And then, we'll come back to that. So this is a rendering of the basement rock within the basin, and so that's showing the cross-sectional profile, and you can see this is with all the sediment and sand, alluvium stripped away. So it shows that we're floating out on all this sand over several hundred feet down to the bedrock beneath us, and you can really see the faults. The Pinto Mountain Fault runs from bottom middle left to top right there, and so the escarpments along those faults are quite steep on the bedrock. This is from a published report. So we initially got involved looking at not just artificial, but looking at septage recharge in what we call thick unsaturated zones. So, for example, the pre-recharge water table out at the recharge facility is about 420 feet down to the top of the saturated zone, so it's quite deep. Classify that as a thick unsaturated zone. And then surrounded, as most people know, most businesses and homes are on septic systems here, and so that septic is making its way slowly through the unsaturated zone. The advantage with such a thick unsaturated zone is there's a high capacity to basically store that septage before it reaches the groundwater table. And so this is just a conceptual cartoon showing in the pink the septage making its way down. You can see that blue house maybe is an older system where it's had more time to make it down to the water table versus that green house that's a younger system, maybe with some finer grain layers that are impeding the flow and it hasn't moved as far. So it's not a slug flow everywhere, or it hasn't made it all down at once. It's getting down in different places. And then this conceptually shows maybe a recharge facility with the recharge water making its way down through the unsaturated zone. And I'll talk about it in a little bit about this idea of direct mobilization versus indirect mobilization of the septage. And I want to point out, primarily with the septic, where the concern is nitrates in water. And the nitrate MCL I'm going to use, there's the MCL that's established is 10 milligrams per liter as nitrogen, so you're measuring the nitrogen that's part of the nitrate, NO3. Or if you're looking at the whole nitrate, it's 45 milligrams per liter. The numbers I'll be using are in reference to the 10, so I'm going to talk about everything in terms of nitrate as nitrogen. So kind of keep the concept of 10, or the number of 10 in your mind in terms of the MCL for nitrate. So these are nitrate concentrations in groundwater at the wells. These are both from the Joshua Basin production wells as well as the monitoring wells. And looking at these, you can see, for example, 17 and 16 are out there by themselves away from any focused sources of nitrate. And we see this throughout the Mojave Desert. Background concentrations, you're going to find nitrate naturally occurring in the aquifers out here. Usually 2 to 3 milligrams per liter is kind of a good estimate of what background, if you drill a well in a, quote, pristine area, you're probably going to find nitrate in groundwater between 2 and about 3. So you can see most of the wells, 14, 15, 16, 17, are on the order of 3. Should point out JTUZ 3 and JTUZ 2 were not drilled all the way to the water table, so there are no wells there. I have the number for JTUZ 4, which is there at the recharge facility. Pre-application of recharge, we have a nitrate concentration of 2. We're getting registered. And looking at, so JTUZ 4, pre-recharge 2 milligrams per liter. Looking at Joshua Basin production well number 10, we have 5 milligrams per liter, and that's likely due to some septage that has reached it there, but it's not, notice it's not above the MCL for the, I shouldn't say the septage, the nitrate in the groundwater has reached that well there. You look at JTUZ 1, when we first drilled JTUZ 1 in 2008, the nitrate was 12 milligrams per liter, indicating nitrate had reached the saturated zone up there on Desert Air Road on the alluvial fan. Last year, the last time we sampled it, it's actually gone up to 20, and so I'll talk about that in a little bit, where we saw it really flat at 12 every time we sampled it from basically 2008 until 2016, and I'll talk about that in a moment. I guess I'm going to talk about it right now. JTUZ1, so this is a graph on the left axis, and I apologize, the text is a little small to see. The left axis is depth to water. So that's the depth of the water in the well. So if you look at the line with the blue dots, those are measured water levels from the well. So you can see if you move along that line from left to right, you can see a slow decline in the water table, which is to be expected out here. We kind of see that as the aquifers are being pumped. So we have this left to right decline in the water table, and then in about 2016, you can see a slight uptick in water levels in JTUZ1, which is a surprise to me at least. The triangles are nitrate concentrations in that well, and this is nitrate as N, so they're around 12, and you can see them bouncing along as 12 till January 2012. We collected another sample in 2014. It was up around 14, which at the time I collected that, I thought, well, that's within the noise. It bounced up 2. But you can see the samples we collected last year, it swung up 18 and then 20. And so this is fairly new stuff. We have not sampled it since our yearly sampling last year. It'll be interesting to see what the nitrate concentrations are. The fact that the nitrate is increasing at the same time as the water level tells me something's going on here. I don't think that facility is close enough to the recharge facility to see increases in water level related to the recharge, so I think there's another source. I've drawn up a little cartoon as to one of the hypotheses here, and none of this is to scale. This would be the monitoring site, JTUZ1. There is the well extending down to the water table, and then you have some septic tanks sitting on land surface. And so through time, maybe over the course of 50 years, septage makes its way down. And this is what we saw at JTUZ1 when we drilled it. We were able to, where the well encountered nitrates in soil, so we were able to see this in the soil. But before we got to the water table, we lost that signal, meaning we weren't able to track nitrate all the way down at that location. And so that's the right bubble there. But in the well, we did have high nitrate. So what we interpreted that as is that there was another source of nitrate coming to the well than what we were seeing in the soil column above the water table there. And so since then, we've had an increase in nitrate concentrations, which it's possible now that given enough time since 2008, that nitrate was close enough to the water table and it's actually reached the water table locally to that well, and maybe we're seeing that, which would also be a reason for an increase in water levels as that septage is drained down. So certainly something to keep an eye on. The good news is it's pretty far from any production wells, so it's maybe a good sentinel well, and glad that it's not right next to a production well. So there's, again, JTUZ1 down there to the south. So I'm going to talk about the recharge facility, primarily, well, JTUZ4. The reason JTUZ4 was installed to monitor the movement of the recharge water through the unsaturated zone, and then to monitor changes in water levels and changes in water chemistry in the saturated zone beneath the recharge site in response to the recharge. There are two concerns, especially as it relates to nitrate, in terms of mobilizing nitrate. Nitrate, or anything really, any undesirable contaminants in the unsaturated zone can be mobilized 2 ways, and that's either through direct mobilization, which I'll show here, where we have a cartoon recharge pond applying recharge water down. The recharge water goes down, intercepts some sort of contaminant, and there's a direct mobilization of that contaminant to the water table. That can be an issue, but it's not as big a concern as the second one, which I'll talk about, because you can see the area that the recharge water encounters the contaminant is relatively limited. And this is what happened in Warren Basin, where they recharged and the water table started to come up, and they thought, well, this is working great. We're getting recharge in our water, and we have the water table come up, if my cartoon will play. And so there's a rising water table, but this is the indirect mobilization, and this is where Yucca Valley really ran into problems, because large volumes of nitrate can be mobilized through this. And so this is something that we're working with Joshua Basin to try to avoid out at the recharge facility. The good news is at least at JTUZ4, the nitrate concentrations are nowhere, the elevated nitrate concentrations are nowhere near the water table. They're hundreds of feet above. So this cartoon is not representative of conditions, say, at the recharge facility here. So that's the difference between indirect and direct mobilization of a contaminant. And again, the concern being the indirect mobilization. This, with all these letters that are too small to see, is the geophysical logs are there on the left from the monitoring site, JTUZ4. The construction, there are 30 plus instruments in there to monitor both the the physical movement of recharge water as well as water quality as it makes its way through the unsaturated zone at JTUZ4 with a well that's installed right at the water table beneath the recharge facility. While we were drilling the well, we also collected soil samples from the unsaturated zone. And so this, I won't go too much into it, but we're analyzing soluble salts, which include nitrate, that are in the unsaturated zone sediment beneath the recharge facility. And so we did see a spike in nitrate at about 16 feet at this site, and then you can see it gets quite low, well below 1 as you get down near the water table. You see this at many desert sites. You'll find below the root zone where the plants have removed the water but natural nitrate has come in with rains, you find a concentration of soluble salts. So you'll find chloride, nitrate, fluoride, other soluble salts below the root zone. And we believe this is naturally occurring. It's at a pretty shallow depth, and as you can see, it goes away down there. So water table, again, at this is about 420 feet down towards the bottom of the chart. This shows the movement of water from the land surface down to the water table at the recharge facility. So the first application of water, the water moved at an average of about 18 feet per day, which is incredibly fast. I talked about this last year. I've seen other recharge sites, if they get 2 vertical feet per day, everybody's really happy. So this is order of magnitude above that. And then once the ground is wetted, it moves a lot quicker. And so that second pass and subsequent passes, it moves at about 30 feet per day. So the recharge goes in the ground incredibly quickly and gets down to the water table quickly, which is good because it can minimize evaporative losses in terms of the recharge in the ponds out at the site. So this is some of the data that's derived from a monitoring site such as JTUZ4 that's out there in the middle of the recharge facility. This is a snapshot of some data from the well at JTUZ4. The light blue transparent bars show when recharge water was applied at the recharge ponds, and the dark blue line shows the depth of water, the water table response. And so that's that 18-day lag or 30-day lag where the water makes its way down and then hits the water table, and there's a rise in the water table in response to recharge. And then when the recharge is shut off, what that's called is there's a mound of water, and then that mound relaxes as the water spreads out to the rest of the aquifer. So this is, again, an example of some of the data from JTUZ4. This data is about 6.5 hours old, so I just collected this today. First look at the bottom chart. This is the water level at JTUZ4 at the recharge facility. So you can see the responses to the various applications of water at that site. The maximum response is 13 to 14 feet, and then as the recharge shuts off and the water moves laterally out to the aquifer, the water table lowers. So the far right curve you can see is in response to the recharge that was applied in March, and it's coming back down. Kurt and I were talking about this earlier today, and what I've shown on there, are we starting to see appreciable gains from the volumes of recharge that have gone in? And the answer is maybe. I put the bottom dashed blue line there, shows what the water level was prior to any recharge being applied, and I've carried it across. And you can see there, maybe it hasn't had enough time just to relax back down, but there's maybe a 1.5 foot tick up from that blue line there in about, I guess it marks it about April 2017. The top graph shows nitrate concentrations in that well, and this is a consequence of that direct mobilization of nitrate that is stored in the unsaturated zone. So you can see nitrate in this well got pretty high, and again, remember this well is directly beneath where the nitrate's being mobilized, and it should be, once sufficient water is applied, it's a one-time flushing of the unsaturated zone. So nitrate got up July 15, a little before July 2015, we had the peak, and you can see it subsequently tapered back off. And so as part of this proposal that's in front of you is to, again, sample this well. We haven't sampled it since last year to see if these nitrate concentrations stay low beneath the recharge facility. So to summarize the recharge monitoring, at least, as I mentioned, the recharge rates are fast, 19 to 30 feet per day. There was minimal clogging of the pond. I didn't talk too much about chemistry, but we didn't see much mixing of recharge water with native groundwater in the immediate vicinity of the well, which is to be expected. That recharge water, in a sense, comes down and displaces the native groundwater as it moves in, and then there's some diffusion across that interface. I said maximum water table rise of about 13 feet, and we have had, I think this most recent one was actually about 14. As I mentioned, the nitrate in the unsaturated zone was mobilized, and the samples in the monitoring well went from 2 up to 43. They're back down to about 2 during the most recent sampling. And so that's that increase of nitrate which would be expected as you flush nitrate from the unsaturated zone. And so we move on from the recharge facility, talk a little bit about well 10 here. So this is the one production well that has nitrate concentrations below the MCL but above background at about 5 milligrams per liter. And so this graph shows the blue dots are nitrate levels in well 10. What I consider, then you can see they're bouncing along at about 5. They used to be above 2 background, and it looks like nitrate moved into the area. So I'm showing how they are above background but still below the MCL. But they're fluctuating up and down, and it's certainly something to keep an eye on. And what's likely happening, the reason that they're at 5 is there's likely in the shallow portion of the aquifer, there's likely elevated nitrate concentrations that are being pulled into the well, but they're being diluted by other water that's deeper. So volumetrically, they're being diluted down to about 5 milligrams per liter. But certainly worth something to keep an eye on. So the proposed work, we touch on most of it. These are the tasks that are in the documentation, are to what I call data collection at the unsaturated zone monitoring sites, and this is JTUZ 1, 3, and 4. And so this is at the recharge facility, and then I added JTUZ 1 because of that increase in nitrates. It looked like it was at steady state conditions for many years, really since it went online until last year, and we've since seen, based on periodic measurements, both increases in nitrate and the water levels actually changing out there. So I think it's worth switching that site back on. All the instrumentation's in the ground. It's a matter of hooking up the battery and then maintaining the battery and downloading the data. So that's task 1. That also includes, and I don't have it spelled out here, collection of water quality samples from what are called suction cup lysimeters. And those are not groundwater samples, they're samples from the unsaturated zone. So it's looking at either recharge water or soil moisture and looking at the chemical constituents of that water that overlies the unsaturated zone. Yes, sir.
Let me interrupt. So in the meeting this afternoon, when we were talking, task 1 for JTUZ 1 and 3 is basically studying the monitoring wells data as a predictive model, as opposed to task 2, which is more of a water quality model, right? So in task 1, there's work at JTUZ 1, and in task 2, there's work at JTUZ 1 as well. So.
The way I divvied up the tasks, and I could have gone either way, but the task 1 basically deals with from the water table up. So it's unsaturated zone sampling, unsaturated zone instrumentation, which you have at both the recharge facility and up on Desert Air Road. Task 2 then is saturated zone, groundwater samples, which is also, we have groundwater samples we can collect at JTUZ 1 at Desert Air Road as well as the recharge facility. And that's how I tried to divvy up costs. So that leads us to task 2, which is to continue the existing basin-wide water quality monitoring program. So this is, we're looking at things like nitrate, chromium's another one, but we're also collecting other suites of analytes that allow us to really kind of track where water's moving, where it's coming from. Things like what are called major minor ions, the stable isotopes of oxygen and hydrogen, to try to understand how the flow system's working. And this is valuable data, so it's nice that we see these changes at JTUZ 1. It's good to have that baseline data to see what it's changing from, and this is something where that water quality monitoring program, I think, is important. Task 3, which we can talk a little bit about, is to flow log, collect depth-dependent samples from well 10, and then, Kurt, do you want me to go? Should I just read these? Sure. Task 4 is the pie in the sky, so this is obviously an expensive one. When we drill wells, it costs a lot of money. This would be to put in a monitoring site similar to JTUZ 4 out on the west end of the recharge facility in closer proximity to the apartment buildings that are out there to try to understand the nitrate profiles in the ground. So back up briefly, but we can look at, we know what it looks like. So JTUZ 4 is here. JTUZ 4 is in the middle of the recharge facility, and this is what the unsaturated zone nitrate profile looks like, which is really a great profile to have for a recharge facility. We have the recharge, or excuse me, the nitrate shallow, but in terms of rising water levels, there's a lot of freeboard to bring water up without entraining any nitrate, I think.
So as we recharge, and hopefully in the future, that results in a rising water table, we know that at the recharge site itself, we can raise the water table quite a bit. The question is the influence of nitrogen, nitrates as nitrogen or whatever, over closer to the Quail Springs Apartments. And also if we were to enter into a water storage agreement with the Mojave Water Agency, the aquifer could potentially raise quicker. And we want to be considering what's around the recharge. That's the general concept there.
And you can see, so the water table, in response to the most recent recharge, you see water level rises in terms of 13 feet, which, so you go from 420 up to even 400 feet, you're not even coming close. But if it's a successful recharge program, you know, the goal is that the water table in that basin will rise in response to that. So that's just something to think about down the road, is what are the vertical nitrate profiles out there, and what is the potential to entrain nitrate from other sources. So that's task 4. And then task 5, the Yucca Barrier out towards the west end between here and Yucca Valley is a poorly understood barrier. And this is, Kirk can probably speak more to this. We talked about this in relation to Sigma and better defining the Joshua Basin or Joshua groundwater basins locally.
So one of the spin-offs or results of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act is managed aquifers have to eventually put together a sustainable groundwater management plan. We're a very low priority basin, so right now the state is focusing on high and medium priority basins. So we thought that we were fine. However, because the DWR in their Bulletin 118, their narrative defines the Warren Basin as ending at the Yucca Barrier, but their map describes it as coming into our service area. That area outside of their adjudicated area, which ends at the Yucca Barrier, the DWR decided that it needed to have some attention, and so we dealt with that this year by working with the Mojave Water Agency as part of their alternative plan for all these unmanaged, unadjudicated basins. And we have an agreement with the DWR that when they revisit the definitions of the aquifers and of the aquifers in 2018, that they will consider revising their map. Bulletin 118 clearly states that the narrative of the aquifer supersedes any maps. And when the map was created, we don't know what happened, but it's erroneous. So that got High Desert and Joshua Basin into a meeting with DWR talking about where is the Yucca Barrier. And I'll try and remember what I said in our meeting this afternoon. USGS has found it, but they haven't located it. So it's, as David said, it's someplace between David and that wall, but we need to know where it is. So that's task 5, which we're not recommending for funding this year. And if we were to go forward, I'm hopeful that High Desert would help us with that study. And I've also asked David to mention a LIDAR study that is ongoing, which may provide some additional information.
And that the USGS is conducting a LIDAR, an aerial LIDAR, where they fire a laser from a plane and are basically mapping topography. It's a pretty, the focus is to really map the Pinto Mountain Fault. So they're flying along the Pinto Mountain Fault, but their coverage extends several miles north and south. So you all are going to get quite a bit of data for free. I don't know if anything will be in it, but it will be nice. LIDAR can be a very effective tool for identifying unmapped faults. And because faults tend to act as barriers to groundwater flow, it's nice to know where they are, especially out in what's the western part of Joshua Basin, or of the district, because many faults are identified based on changes in water level, and there have to be production levels stressing the system in order to get changes in water levels. And so my hope is there'll be some strong lineaments from LiDAR data that maybe will help to better define the basin and also help better define the Yucca barrier. And maybe it'll all come at no cost.
So if the adjudication, if the high desert adjudication says that their basin goes to the Yucca barrier, and they assumed it was Yucca Mesa La Cantena Road, and it's not, does that change the adjudicated basin?
Well, the only thing that's going to change the adjudicated basin is the court. So potentially yes, potentially no.
Okay.
And that's just, if we went back to, we together with High Desert decided to go back to the court and speak to that, potentially they would change it. But right now, it's at the Yucca barrier. And then the unadjudicated part of the Warren Basin extends east of the Yucca barrier, but the two basins, High Desert's Warren Valley Basin and our basin, the Joshua Tree Sub-Basin, the narrative that describes them is at the Yucca barrier. So the map that depicts it being east of the Yucca barrier is incorrect.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
That's all I got. Thanks for your attention.
Oh, excellent report.
Thank
We'll
you.
start with the board. Does the board have any questions for David?
Just a couple. You said that number 4, you had a couple, you called them the pie in the sky stuff, but it was looking at the west end of the recharge over there by those apartments. It's recommended that we approve $109,000 to the extension for the agreement, but over it says the fiscal impact is $63,450. Is that, so it's, number 4 is not included then in the recommendation?
Let me speak to what we're suggesting, recommending. So we're recommending that task 1 be funded, and that's the predictive unsaturated zone sampling at 1 and 3, as well as continuing to monitor JTUZ 4 at the recharge.
And that's down, or rather, that's down that way.
Well, JTUZ 1 is over here, and 3, and 4 is at the recharge. So task 2 is continuation of our basin-wide water quality monitoring program, which has been going on since 2002. Last year, we changed our process so that the district monitored, collected samples on our production wells, and USGS did a quality control collection as well as sampling, I believe, at another well. So the first task is $34,800, the second task is $30,400. When we wrote up this proposal, when David wrote up the proposal, we talked, and I put together the staff report. The third item that we were going to recommend is the flow logging for JBWD 10 at $43,000, and that's how you get to the $109,000. So task 4, we're not recommending that it be approved. And task 5, we're not recommending that it be approved, but we wanted you to be aware of it. Sometime in the future, we may want to fund it. So then, in this afternoon's meetings, when we were discussing the flow logging for JBWD 10, David, in preparation for tonight's meeting, and in preparation for the project, went back and reviewed USGS data in 2005.
Yes.
This flow logging data was done, but the report was not apparently written up in 2005. So we have, USGS has data from 2005. And looking at that data, which David has done, it indicates, along with the fluctuation in interest that David identified in the last sampling at JTUZ1, where it's, how about the water level and the nitrate level?
Oh, JTZ1.
Okay, so as David mentioned, the water was level, the blue dots was trending down until last year, and it's now trending up. And the nitrates were pretty much bouncing around, and now they appear to be trending up, which matches our nitrogen tests of the last couple of years that we do as part of our well sampling. So we believe that we have enough data from 2005 that we need to look at this, but we believe that the actions in task 1 and 2 will give us enough information and data to be relatively certain about what's going on there. And so we reached an agreement, a conclusion, that to fund the flow logging for JBWD 10 this year is not necessary. We should do task 1 and task 2, and depending on those findings, either next year or in the next 3 or 4 years, we may potentially do the second flow logging of JBWD 10 and compare what we found in '05, the data that we find this year from task 1 and 2, and move on from there. So all we're recommending tonight is that the board approve funding for task 1 and task 2 for $65,200 as opposed to the $109,000.
That number 4 sounded important, though, over by the recharge by the apartments.
It is important, and it's, I believe it's something that eventually the district will want to do. I don't think that we need to do it this year.
So you think task 3, 4, and then 5, yeah, you would think we'd go in high desert on that for sure.
And if we get really lucky, the LiDAR
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
solve it all.
So we are, financially, we're approving, even though the they approved 109,000, that's not,
Yeah, the new recommendation is $65,200.
As I pulled the rug out, wonder from Kirk on that number, at, 130, 140.
okay.
And you
But
can
I
see,
think it
so,
also demonstrates the partnership. I mean, USGS could have said, yeah, we need to do that. And because we've been working with USGS and David for the last many years, I think our communication, cooperation, and trust is pretty well established.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Tom?
No, ma'am.
Gary?
Yeah, I was curious if, say hypothetically, we did 4 and we found that there was a source of, there was nitrogen contamination down to a certain level, maybe from septage. Would that then mean that we might want to have a strategy of only maintaining the water level, table level at a certain level to keep it separated from?
precisely, and give, and then engineer in a buffer, and, okay, so the nitrate appears to have made it down to 350, let's not raise water levels above 380, keep some sort of, I don't know what that freeboard is, at that point it becomes an engineering management decision.
Right.
That's related to that precisely.
Dave, show the profile again that you did at
The wrong direction.
the nitrate profile. So you imagine if, sorry, I work at USGS also.
No, Brad, let me take a moment.
Just a
I was
very
about to
important member of
say.
the audience.
You can imagine, so this was at the recharge facility. Imagine if you saw a bunch of zigzagging all the way to the bottom, as a result of seepage that is done. And the recharge facility seems to have shown us that it's almost, when we recharge, it just goes straight down. Very little lateral movement. So maybe nearby, you're getting a similar kind of plug flow. If you drilled close to that neighborhood, you would almost expect something like a whole bunch of zigzags. But what if it stopped 100 feet short of the water table, and the fact that because they only had so much water a year, it hasn't gotten all the way down to the bottom. It would give you the freeboard of how much could you recharge before you were going to start to train that indirect method down the bottom.
Thank you. Tom, you had something?
I was just kind of curious, if this water pile effect was going to cause the water to rise or actually remain for a time in this area where we get this nitrate plume.
So, I'm not sure if I understand the question. This slide shows the rise in water table in response to recharge, and that's really a mound of water on the water table that then subsides through time. And so you can see this rises from the pre-recharge levels at 420 feet, peaks at about 395. So that's how high the water's getting beneath the recharge facility. And if you look at the nitrate profile in the unsaturated zone, so 395, 400, you can see that, so these are direct measurements of nitrate in the unsaturated zone sediment at the recharge facility. And you can see that it's rising into very low nitrate bearing soils, at least given the height of recharge, given the volume of water that's been applied. Am I coming at your question?
Yeah, and also too, I was kind of curious if, when this piling of water, is there if it's there for a length of time, is it going to absorb more of these nitrates, or is that
Yeah,
a
boy.
fairly quick phenomenon where?
It's pretty quick in terms of the nitrate. A lot of these they're fairly mobile. That's a great question. I could get some geochemist colleagues to probably bore us all to death. A good answer, but the way we analyze this to move these what we call soluble salts, which include nitrate, chloride, fluoride, bromide, is we take the soil sample and put it on what's called a wrist shaker, which is something that shakes it in a bottle for about 24 hours. And we've done then subsequent extraction tests where it appears that we're getting all of these soluble salts out within 24 hours. So it's a pretty quick time to get it out. Presumably, I guess if it did sit in contact for weeks, days, years, right, as the water table rises, you may get a little more, but I think you're getting most of it out in a relatively short period of time, because this comes out in 24 hours.
Oh,
That's a great question.
thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Yes, Al?
Back in 2004, publication 18, USGS put out as far as overdrafts on the water district, US Basin Water District. And there was a confusion about the overdraft stated quite a bit by board of directors in those days back in 2000s. They were saying that we were in an overdraft of 1,600 acre feet of water overdraft. Information that USGS put out that we were in a overdraft of 400 acre feet of water a year because of 1,200 acre feet from inducement from either from Yucca Valley and natural underground resources. So which is correct? Are we in an overdraft of 1,600 acre feet a year, or are we under 400 acre feet a year?
I don't know the number out of the model. I would have to look at the 2004 model. You are correct that it's a banking account and what's coming across or what's being removed by pumping versus what's coming in across the Yucca Barrier mountain front recharge. And I would have to look at the model to see what the numbers are. I'm not familiar with that discrepancy between the two sources, but I'd be happy. I can look it up on my computer when I take a seat here.
Any other questions for Dave? Seeing none, does the staff any other questions?
So I do have a quick question. So just to point out, you were talking about the mounding effect, about 390 feet, that's roughly here, correct?
Yeah.
And so we're at 1 milligram per liter, and obviously the threshold is 10, so when we're coming up here, it's roughly 75 feet. So from a water management standpoint, we want to create a buffer zone in here. I mean, we're far from a buffer zone as far as being able to recharge for several years. before that becomes an issue.
And that's absolutely right. And I've done some back of the napkin calculations where an estimated porosity, given this concentration of nitrate, if you put in this much water, these are the concentrations you'd expect if you were to dissolve all that nitrate. The thing when we're playing these games to keep in mind, and this is where that other site, becomes interesting, is that's representative conditions directly beneath JTUZ4. I can't speak to the heterogeneity. It looks great, but I can't speak to the lateral heterogeneity of the system based on one data point. It looks good, but you can see it changing in a relatively short distance, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
And task 4 would give us a better idea, and particularly how septic systems might be.
And especially, the goal would be to push it up against whatever septic's over there, get it as close as we can, and say, all right, this is, as far as we can tell, a worst-case scenario.
Right.
This should be the worst of the worst.
Right.
And so maybe 4 is being distilled as representative of the recharge facility overall, but then let's see how bad it could be. And that's the intent of task 4, I guess.
Which we will do, but not right now. Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, David, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You do a great job. Thank you, too. I don't know your name.
Sorry, this is my colleague Brad. He's been with the survey fairly recently, but comes from a long, illustrious scientific career, and so get him up here and show him the high desert. Yeah.
Welcome, Brad. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for being
thank you,
here.
thank you.
Cool. So I'm sure you'd like to wait and have us do the resolution before you leave.
We're gonna drive down the hill to San Diego, so I apologize. We're
Okay.
gonna sneak out
That's
the back
okay.
door here.
So item number 8 is recommend the board approve, well, it's not 109, what is it again?
It's
65,200?
It's item 7, okay.
Was that right?
Yeah, 65,200.
Extension to the joint funding agreement with USGS. So do I have a second?
I
Are you
second.
making a motion?
I'm making a motion.
Okay.
No, you can make the motion.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
I'm not supposed to.
Oh, okay. Right, then I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Unanimous. You guys are in business. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, you guys are really great.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Kurt.
Nice meeting you, Brad.
Safe drive.
We'll see you again.
Okay, and there's no one here from the Combs? Is there anyone here? I don't see Mr. Combs. All right, so we're going to skip that thing and go to
So-
standing.
Madam President, you can either table it, I can contact them and see if they would like it brought forward to the next meeting. So.
Why don't you check and see what they wish to do?
Okay.
Hopefully, it's been resolved.
So we're tabling it for tonight?
Yeah. Okay, standing committee report. Finance Committee. And Tom just went on that. We have not met, so we will be meeting on June 22nd from 9 to 11. It's a long meeting because we have a lot of information to cover, so that's coming up on the 26th, 5 days from now. Water Resources and Operations has also not met. We're going to meet on the 26th. Legislative and Public Information Committee, Kathleen Radnich.
One moment. All right. Of number. While I am having something pointed out, okay. I have slated the dates for our summer wild crafting training session. I have flyers here which will be out in the lobby, but I want to point out that if anyone has taken any of the past classes and wants to participate, they can jump in on any of the 4 sessions. This time we do have the 4 because we have the nursery tour planned. So July 25th, Thursday, we have our overview here, and that's at 10 a.m. Tuesday, August 1st, we're out in the field. We will take care of this heat wave before then. That's the plan.
I know you're powerful.
Yes. We're hoping it breaks by August. Friday, August 11th, we are back in the classroom cleaning seeds and learning about propagation. Then Thursday, September 7th, at 10 a.m., we'll meet at the Joshua Tree National Park Nursery for a tour. And those who were in the spring session did not get to take a tour. We postponed all the touring to the very end to September. So again, that is open to anyone that's taken earlier classes. The grant application awards, we're still waiting, but we have it on good authority that Mojave Water Agency, who funds AWAC, has diminished their bank account by about 75% for these special grant requests. We'll see what happens, but they're still trying to work through it all. And the next Public Information Committee meeting is July 5th, here in the boardroom at 9:30 a.m. Let Karen talk about the CDC. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Citizens Advisory Committee, Dr. Tracy.
The CAC has not met since I last reported. I will have a report after our next meeting, which has been appointed at July 12th, Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock.
Excellent. Curtis, we're going through this agenda. I just realized there's nothing about Katie's in here. Was there something you
We
wanted?
can do that with directors' reports on meetings attended, comments on the future agenda.
Okay. No district council, so general manager's report.
Okay, several things. You know, following up on what Kathleen mentioned about MWA, AWAC cutting their funding for the conservation and public outreach by 75%. In discussions with the staff, I asked, well, that's a fairly significant cut. And one of the reasons is, turns out that the Mojave Water Agency is one of the 29 retailers in the state, owns 2% of the Oroville Dam. And they're responsible for 2% of repairing Oroville Dam.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why they're paying particular attention to their budget, in addition to other things. Who knew, right, that our wholesaler is a part owner of the Oroville Dam?
Oh my God. 2% could be huge.
Yeah, well, they'll find federal funds, I'm sure, in the infrastructure program. Okay, so well 14 update. The well has been offline since approximately February of 2016. We hired a company that rehabbed it. It failed to meet the conditions of the contract. They reworked it, failed to meet conditions of the contract, so we hired a different company. That started approximately April 5th or so, and they stayed on schedule. They re-cleaned, brushed the casing. They added acid to, as required by the contract. They vacated that with an air pump compressor. They chlorinated it, and we started pumping the well on June 5th, which is standard operating, June 2nd, which is standard operating procedure after a rehab. And on June 5th, we tested for the first time after three days of flushing for 6 hours a day. And the total coliform count came back as present. and the heterotrophic plate counts, which is a quantification of the colonies of bacteria, came back at greater than 5,700. We pumped the well for 6 hours that day, 6 hours the next day, and then we went to pumping for an extended period of time, and up through June 9th, the bacteria was present, the quantitres were ranging, which is an analysis of how many bacteria there is. Range from greater than 200 to 275, and the HPCs were up at 5,000, 10,000. Then we continued to pump, and on June 12th, we started to see the total coliform bacteria is still present, but the quantitres have dropped from 275 down to 18, and the HPCs have gone to 5 and 10,000 down to 350, which is below the state standard to bring the well back online. After consulting with the rehab company, with Dudek Engineering and their hydrogeologists, we continued to pump for another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, 7, 8 days, and we still have a presence of total coliform, but the quantitres are down to about 10. But the last 4 days of pumping, they've maintained that level. And the theory was that you continue to pump this well until the bacteria is absent. It's being pulled in, either it's still in the column, it's still in the gravel pack, or it's in the formation, and the colonies out in the formation have been disrupted by the acid that was applied and the chlorine that was applied. So not only last Friday and this Monday did we consult with the pump company and Dudek, we've also consulted with Mojave Water Agency, and they have brought in a new person with a lot of pump experience from Hallandale, and their recommendation was that, okay, we've pumped long enough, it should be clearing up, although with some wells that are this deep, they know of times that you have had to pump up to a month. So as in the last 2 days, we've come up with a plan starting Friday. We will test the well again. We've let it set for 3 days. One of the theories is you let the well set, and the natural flow of the aquifer will take the loosened bacteria colonies and float it away, rather than us pulling it into the column. So we're going to wait 3 days. We're going to take samples Friday morning. They'll come back Saturday, and if they are better than they have been, we'll continue to let the well sit. If they are the same or higher, then we will pre-wet the gravel pack on Saturday and Sunday. On Monday, we will chlorinate the column and casing again, and it'll have to sit for 2 days after we've reached a chlorination level of approximately 150 to 200 parts per million. That'll give it time to kill any of the bacteria that's in the well, or that's in the well. We'll then neutralize it, we'll pump it. Once it's reached a state where you can sample, then we'll take another sample, actually 5 samples on a day. And if that doesn't work, then we will chlorinate the gravel pack, and that'll take an additional 3 days. It will have to sit for a day, and hopefully with either of those treatments, we will have gotten rid of the bacteria. So that's the plan. Randy, as of this afternoon, is putting together the schedule. We expect that this will take some additional 2 weeks, and you'll see more water flowing out of the well into the arroyo. As of Monday, we had pumped 116 acre-feet, or 37.7 million gallons. Last year, we pumped 107 acre-feet to try and clear up the well. And most of that water is going back into the aquifer. Sometimes it has gotten to Sunfair, sometimes it's gotten to La Fernie, but by far and away, the vast majority of that water is going back into the ground from Center to Rice. And so it's a standard operating procedure for a large well. We are somewhat surprised that it's taking this long to bring it back into compliance, but that's our latest plan. I also want to mention to you that the amount of money authorized to rehab this well the second time was $174,000. We are currently at $198,000 with the contractor. Now, $8 of that thousand is based on my decision to bring in a larger compressor so that the airlifting could be increased and we could complete the project sooner than it was taking, so that we would pay less personnel costs to the contractor. And the other, whatever it is, 16,000, is based on the amount of time that this contractor has had to spend adequately pumping out the sump and removing some debris that was left over from the first rehab, and adequately excavating or airlifting the acid and doing it in a good way. So we've exceeded the 174. I didn't come back to the board and ask if it was okay to add another 16,000. That's under my 20,000 authorization, and I figured that you would say yes. And the same thing with the pump. This activity that we're doing in the next 2 weeks, with the cooperation of the contractor, they offered to supply their chemical trailer, they offered to supply the NW410 chlorine enhancer. They've sent their crews up with no charge to install a 10-inch valve on the bypass so that we can pre-wet the gravel pack, and the distribution crew is going to do this work and hopefully make it work. So that's where we are with well 16. I have a few more comments about well 16, but I'll pause and see if you have any questions.
16 or 14?
14, excuse me. Yeah. If we could fix the Chrome 6 in well 16 by pumping 116 acres, that'd be great.
I don't have any questions on that.
No, nice report. Anybody? Anyone in the audience? Hearing none?
Okay, so also, we're moving into the summer season. And we're at the same place we were last year. So wells 14, 10, and 15 provide the water for approximately 80% of our customers. Wells 16 and 17 provide water for the other 20%. With well 16 and well 14 being offline, and it produces 60% of all of our water, wells 10 and 15 have to continue to work. If they don't, then a portion of our demand will not be able to be met if one well 10 or well 15, goes offline. So we are in the process of coming up with an emergency plan. We may have to invoke part of the Urban Water Management Plan water shortage contingency chapter. We may have to utilize the intertie between High Desert and us. DUDEC has been asked to review how the distribution system could be supported with that intertie. We are looking at the hauling station out on Sunfair, I think it is. We're exploring other contingencies. Randy and Bill and Steve do a phenomenal job in keeping up. Just for example, I think it was Sunday night, it may have been Saturday night. Well 10 was operational. It went down for an electrical problem. And Bill worked on it for 2.5 hours, and then he called Randy Little, and they worked on it until they could get well 10 back up and operating.
Oh my God.
And they came to work at 6 o'clock in the morning with less than 4 hours of sleep. So that's the kind of dedication that we have in our staff. And of course, the distribution folks under Jim Corbin are more than willing to help out. And so that's where we are with well 14 and where our planning is. And I just want you to be aware that if everything works fine like it did last year, great. If it doesn't, then we're going to go to our customers and we're going to go to our partner agencies and come up with a plan or implement the plan. So,
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the general manager? Anything from the public? Seeing none?
wait, I have more.
Oh, you have,
I'm already not going to sleep tonight. Come on, Kurt.
So the chromium-6 update. So we met with the Division of Drinking Water folks last week, right?
A couple weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago. Randy and Greg Guillen from Dudek Engineering. We have our preliminary engineering report for treating chromium-6 with anion exchange, stannous chloride. We are still exploring whether or not stannous chloride can treat chromium-6 with or without filtration. And what happens with stannous chloride is it totally converts hexavalent chromium, chromium-6, to chromium-3, trivalent chromium. It doesn't change your total chromium. So when you expose it to a system that has to be chlorinated, some 10 to 30% of that chromium-3 reconverts. So, but if you have a well that is at 20, let's say 21, then I'll use 30%. So that's like 6 or 7 parts per billion could become chromium-6. That's under the 10 MCL, so you wouldn't have to install a treatment plant that included filtration. The city of Coachella Valley has received agreement that they can put together a protocol to test this stannous chloride treatment without filtration on a full scale from the Division of Drinking Water. They're going to their board on June 27th for approval to do it. The Division of Drinking Water will approve their protocol to test it, and if it proves successful, it will result in a significant capital and expense to put in a filtration system and a reduction of their O&M operating expenses. We think that if we don't have to do the filtration, that we could reduce our estimated costs from 15 million to 11 million for stannous chloride, and our annual operating and maintenance would be reduced by 30%. So we're going to design a bench scale, not a full scale test, and working with Dudek, et cetera. And we have a meeting, a phone call tomorrow with the Division of Finance project manager for our grant and loan, and get up to speed with him. And most probably our November deadline for having draft construction drawings will be delayed because the Division of Drinking Water is working with us, and Division of Finance is willing to work with us as long as we're working with the Division of Finance. And in addition to that, I want to reiterate to the board and to the public that, as Gil mentioned at the last meeting, the court has ruled that the state must rescind its MCL level, and it also ruled that the state may establish a new MCL, anywhere from 0.2 parts per billion to 50 parts per billion. The state has yet to decide whether or not they're going to appeal or if they're going to move the MCL level. But Kathleen tells me that several people in the public at farmers market have mentioned, hey, it's great that the MCL problem is gone. The MCL problem is not gone, okay? We, just like Coachella and the Valley and the city of Coachella and many other water districts, are moving forward with the stannous chloride, assuming that it's going to be 10 parts per billion. And when the state decides what they're going to do, we can adjust our designs. But we are, it's my opinion, and many people's opinion, that there will be an MCL level for Chrome 6. And we're just trying to get prepared for that. I have more.
But when they redo the MCL, they're doing, based on the lawsuit was suing them because they didn't take financial consideration. All right, so they're gonna do it on what could be a financial consideration or a health level.
You know, the
For-
court ruled that they need to revisit their economic feasibility, and so they're doing it on an economic feasibility. Let me rephrase that. That's what the court said. If the state decides to do it on a scientific and economic feasibility, I don't think they will, but they could. They just have to do the economic feasibility.
Okay, there's more.
There's more. But wait, there's more. Okay, the heating and air conditioning update. The installation was completed at a total cost of under $40,000 rather than the $82,000 that it was originally estimated by your general manager. And that includes project management oversight.
Good job.
Ann and Autumn's office is now a comfortable 74 rather than 84. Customer service is about 5 degrees cooler, and all 4 of the eastern offices are some 8 to 10 degrees cooler at 74 degrees in the morning. In this heat wave, it's gotten up to 78, 79 in the building, but it used to get up to 85.
Wow.
So it's worked. It's worked so well that even the cockroaches that inhabit the building are moving around and finding warmer places. They're moving very slowly. We've also looked into, it wasn't in the scope of work, but there are 2 attic exhaust fans. Both of them were tested this week. They are not operational and they will be replaced. And the vents in the attic, it's 130 degrees. Monday it was 130 degrees in the attic. So we are looking at enlarging the vents on either end of the building, and we're putting solar shades on the windows in Keith's office. And several members of staff expressed their desire to make sure that I thank the board for the support of this project. County mental health facility. The county has begun construction on June 19th of the mental health facility. That's what's going on along the highway. They have a will serve letter. Their pipeline replacement plans have been approved with amendments. They're working with the Regional Water Resource Control Board on their treatment plant, which is a denitrification septic tank, which gets back to JTUZ 1 and 3, the densely populated area of downtown Joshua Tree. We know there's some nitrates that have arrived at the aquifer there and at the aquifer here. Well, not the aquifer, but the water table. I guess it's all part of the aquifer. And our distribution staff has contacted their project superintendent and will be monitoring and inspecting all the water line infrastructure being installed that we will take ownership of. Dollar General Store. This should result in a packed audience next board meeting. We've received a request from Dollar General for a will serve letter, and we received it on January 18th. They've deposited $5,000 to cover district costs, and the county mental health facility is depositing $40,000 to cover costs, engineering review, etc. Last week, they submitted sewer and water plans. Dollar General submitted sewer and water plans for the building, which was being reviewed by DUDEC. Once the plans are approved, we'll move forward with preparing to issue them a will serve letter. However, this ownership is similar to Nextera. The Richardson family owned the land. Nextera had a contract with the Richardson family. And so the will serve letter, before we issued it, they had to show us that they had contractual agreements with the owner. I don't quite understand how Dollar General works, but the architectural firm that's representing a person that will take ownership of the land has requested all this stuff. So you got an owner of the land, and you've got a person that has a contractual agreement with the owners of the land to take ownership. Once the Dollar General store is approved, it is approved, and it goes into effect, Dollar General is nowhere in the picture. So if they're, I don't know if they're a franchise or what they are. But because of that ownership issue, the will serve letter, I've asked Gil and his crew to fabricate a will serve letter and potentially a water supply agreement, I don't think they'll need one, along the lines of what we did with Nextera. So it's not going to just be a standard will serve letter. We're going to review their sewer plans, their water plans, make sure that we are issuing something to the people that actually have the right to receive a will serve letter. Will serves and meter quotes, it continues to be quite busy at the office. There's currently 2 mainline extension applications that engineering DUDEC need to be reviewed for private residences. The regulatory compliance analyst position has been sent to the union for comments. We received those comments on Monday. We'll be working on a few minor changes, and then I'll bring that to the board. And Gary, do you need any more information on the Mojave Water Agency water costs?
No, not
Okay.
at this time.
And that's it.
Okay, we'll start with the board. Anything?
We've got future director meetings and training opportunities.
No, I want to finish on Kurt's.
Oh, no, I'm
Is any questions from the board on Kurt's?
depressed already. Thanks, Kurt.
Any county questions? Yes, Thomas?
Yeah, about the Dollar General, like what's the timeline in terms of crafting the will serve?
Well, I don't know what their timeline is. They originally contacted us on January 18th, and just last week they supplied us with the sewer and water plans.
Okay.
So that's 5 months. I'm assuming that they want to move forward, but we'll review their plans in 2 to 3 weeks. We'll get back with them, and the will serve letter is going to have to be crafted, and they're going to have to provide evidence of this contractual agreement. So, you know, I can't answer
Are they still in
finitely.
litigation?
That I don't know.
No, they're apparently free and clear to do what they have. There is something that is happening, but that's kind of, yeah, I guess we don't know yet until middle of July whether that's gonna come out. But yeah, it's apparently they're free to do what they want so far. So.
I have a question. You keep talking about sewer plans. They don't need, do they need a package treatment plant? They certainly don't, do they?
That probably not, but they're in the wastewater treatment strategy area. And that's why DUDEC is reviewing and estimating what their EDU, equivalent dwelling units would be, et cetera.
Great, thank you. Okay, yes, Mr. Marquez.
We'll serve later for Nextera, solar, and also the housing development.
Maybe you better go up there because he needs to
They're
record.
asking questions out here, well, they don't have to get up there.
Okay, if he can't hear you, then you won't be on the tape. Go ahead.
I can't hear you. Forget it.
I can't hear you.
Go ahead, Al.
Never mind.
All right, future directors meetings and training opportunities. The Mojave Water Agency Board of Directors meeting is tomorrow at 4:30. And at
3:30.
3:30, that's right, they've changed it. And most of the board is going, and General Manager Sauer is going. It's Director Ungers to go to, but I think we're all going to be there. That's Kirby Burrell's final hurrah. So that will be the last time we'll be seeing him. ASB-CSD, Association of San Bernardino County Special Districts, is going to have their dinner July 17th in Phelan Pinion Hills. And the Technical Advisory Committee is August 3rd at 10 a.m. And we'll go to director's reports on meetings attended and comments and future agenda items. We'll start with Director Unger.
I have a couple of things. In the current Aqua newsletter, that's our our advocacy group, the Association of California Water Agencies. Joshua Basin Water District was in there, be the next conversation. They showed us accepting the award for the Heel-Hauser Best in Blue Award and using us as a poster child for their next one of those. And it was nice to see Victoria's smiling face, and they were very sweet. They put in a really nice obit for Victoria, so that was very, very nice. A lot of you people do know David Lamfrom. He is the Director of California Desert and National Wildlife Programs for the Pacific region of the National Parks Conservation Association. He has had several groups sign on to a letter going to Secretary of the Interior Zinke in opposition to the Cadiz project. And everyone got a copy. My gosh, he's got about 100 people who've signed on to this. And it's a huge amount of people of a whole variety. And I thought I would bring it here. I don't know if I should read the letter. It's not a long letter, but I'm going to read it into the record, but everyone has a copy of it. And I would like to, maybe, I guess, for our next agenda item, so the directors could look at it, and I'd like to have us vote on whether we would be signatories to the opposition to Cadiz letter going to Ryan Zinke.
Okay, just for the record, and I think we found it, the board has opposed the Cadiz project before. We actually, I don't think we passed a resolution, we couldn't find it, but we did vote and oppose, so we are in opposition, but that's a good idea.
So I guess that would be on next agenda item then to...
Yeah, so give it to Beverly, please.
Okay.
And this would be a resolution to sign on to this current letter?
Yeah, as a resolution, yeah.
Okay, Director Flone.
I'm still the new guy. It's been a little over a month.
Right.
Got it, Bob. I've been to the Association of San Bernardino County Special Districts a couple times, their meetings. And just recently, we were over at, the last one that they had was, they had a presentation on whether or not to spend reserves on projects or to borrow. It was kind of an okay presentation, and it was a good introduction to that whole area right there. So I found it meaningful going the 85 miles and back again to that one up in Hesperia. First time I've ever been there, took a little bit of a tour of Hesperia. At any rate, it's becoming a pretty large experience being a director on a water board. It is quite challenging, but I'm finding that not only are there a lot of smart people involved in this whole subject area everywhere, but they're also very affable, nice people coming up and wanting to shake my hand and welcome me to their meetings and such. So this is all very imposing for a person, but when you encounter at all these other agencies, just some very warm and welcoming people, it's a bit of a comfort. So I'm looking forward to going to Mojave tomorrow, which is 60 or 80 miles, whatever it is, in a carpool. Thank you, that's all.
It's an hour and a half, so it's longer than that. Dr. Hunt.
I have no comments tonight.
Okay, and my only comment, well, not probably my only comment, Pipeline Commission met today. I don't think there was anything of earth-shaking news on their agenda. I chair that, and it was really very nice. We had Director Brill, or General Manager Brill was there for the last time, and we met the new director, Tom McCarthy, who is very bright, and we liked him. Kurt had met him before, so he looks forward to working with us, and we look forward to working with him. And with that, do I have a motion for adjournment?
I move we adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are, and I